With Half-Life 1 rounding its big 25th anniversary in 2023 and now officially out of DiCaprio's dating pool, a replay of the then technical marvel is very much in order. Now, I realize that a specific well-received fan reimagining of the original Half-Life exists, but it lacks a certain je ne sais quoi most paramount to my experience.
Hello.
Half-Life 1, or rather just Half-Life, is a 1998 first-person shooter developed by Valve, their debut title in fact, and a massive commercial hit. Lauded for its technical advancement and innovation, Half-Life is often still brought up as one of the most influential games, period. But to say that Half-Life is the most historically important shooter would be complete Quake and Doom erasure which instead should be applied elsewhere. Built on a modified version of the Quake engine, where Half-Life shined in particular was its scripted world and NPC events, basically unseen to that degree in the dark ages of 1998. Now, I was unable to play and enjoy Half-Life on its release, being only 5 years old and having yet to develop object permanence, but I did return a few years later only to be frightened beyond reasoning at the point where you have to pass the room with the head crab completely unarmed. This, however, was a blessing in disguise, as not only was the prepubescent me spared a skin-tight black leather dominatrix fetish, as well as witnessing the dumbfuckery of the Zen parkour sections at such a tender age. But it also had me replaying the intro all the way to the Resonance Cascade event multiple times. And if there ever was any doubt of the focus on the brave new frontiers of environmental storytelling, replaying the Half-Life tram intro will quickly dissuade you from such heathen notions. Every scene is ram-packed with tiny little snippets of what goes on at your workplace. No demons, no supernaturals, just your standard old commute to work, insofar your place of employment is also a highly secret research complex built in a Cold War era ICBM launch silo. The technical showcase aspect of the tram ride is obviously quite quaint and outdated nowadays, beautiful vats of green goo aside, but there is a story being told in the environmental sets. That is what the man in my walls keep telling me. We are Dr. Gordon Freeman, an MIT graduate with a PhD in theoretical physics and 0 maidens. Gordon is a rough-looking 27, likely due to the stress from his doctorate or perhaps his postdoc associate job requiring him to do such menial tasks as pushing buttons, pushing carts, or pushing the boundaries of good cafeteria etiquette.
Gordon, you lousy motherfucker.
The silent, blank slate protagonist is not at all anything special in this era, although Gordon Freeman is way more of an everyman than the soldier's bitter man or Doom Marine, reinforced by the intro being as mundane as a work commute. We are Gordon Freeman, and our place of employment, and where the vast majority of the game will take place, is the Black Mesa research facility. The prior mentioned intro, besides being an engine and graphical showcase, serves to immerse us in the role of a strap-hanging commuter. But why? Where games like Quake 2 and Unreal had bombastic sci-fi intros, or literally got you straight into the shooting and demon slaying like Doom does, Half-Life has you running 30 minutes late while staffers mill about, doing whatever it is science folks do. There is life moving here without your input. Small motions and gestures is all you need to impart a sense of vibrancy.
Excuse me, Gordon, but I'm rather busy now.
Have you been able to get the beverage machine to work yet?
Stop!
Just another day at the job, which makes the coming disaster feel that much more impactful in contrast to the relative mundanity of the here and now. Black Mesa is humongous. Different layouts, multiple rooms, green goo. What? It is also here we see the greatest crimes of all. Multiple OSHA violations. Truly another win for New Mexico occupational hazards. And very apt for a science facility still mulling over the virtues of E equals MC squared. In fact, the intro has a lot of fun foreshadowing. The intro text shows that Gordon's sponsor is unknown, and then right after puts the mysterious Gman basically front and center. Here we'll also catch another glimpse of the man in black. Curious, he was stuck behind us in the tram. There must be another docking station for him to make it here that fast. The first few guards you interact with have particular prognostications for you as well. The second guard you meet, battling a terminal case of blue screen of death, laments that
just one of those days, I guess.
Why, yes indeed it is. The third Barney clone remarks,
looks like you're in the barrel today.
A phrase meaning that you'll probably find yourself in an unpleasant or dangerous situation very soon, stemming from an old sailor's joke. A sailor arrives at his new position, defending the virtues of freedom. He is given a tour of the ship, let's call her the USS 1919 Newport YMCA, and shown a barrel with a titillating hole punched into it. It is indeed a mythical glory hole, and the strapping young sailor is promised free usage of its services every day except for Tuesdays. Well, why not on Tuesdays? Because Tuesday is your turn in the barrel. And today is indeed our turn in the barrel. In this case, the barrel being the anomalous testing chamber and the proverbial schlong being the GG3883 Zen crystal specimen. The semen is of course the... Going deeper into the maw of Black Mesa, we are briefed by the science team. It seems that we are running our Samsung systems quite hot. In the test chamber is where our mundane post-doctoral life comes to a crashing end, alongside the rest of the entirety of the human world, I guess. Our bad guys. Segments of an alien world, Zen, flashes before us, promising exploration outside the sterile walls of the Black Mesa labs. Although sterile might not be the correct word anymore. The formerly safe, uneventful workplace is now transformed to a bloody sideshow. Gore, horror, and Mossad levels of electronic appliance explosions. We have a great frame of reference of the before, especially since we are kinda the cause of the after. It also serves as a nice introduction to the World Script events, much lauded at its time and still very effective in the gameplay and game design. Set pieces exploding as the player approaches is obviously effective design at conveying just how foobar the entire situation is. Outside of that, it also shapes and reshapes the game environment continuously. Rather than the world being static, it feels organic and reactive. It is not that the destruction has happened, it is that the destruction is happening. We are not living in the aftermath of the Black Mesa incident. The entirety of Half-Life is living through the chaos of the ongoing resonance cascade, and the ever-changing, ever-collapsing set pieces are perfect environmental storytelling to convey this. Show, don't tell. Unless of course you are a Dragon Age Origins romance scene, then please, don't show, just tell. It's fine. Differentiating itself from other action shooters of its time, Half-Life also features friendly, non-butchered and occasionally helpful NPCs, although they certainly are not perfect. There are a few gamer philosophies when it comes to the Einsteins and the Barneys of Half-Life. Some would prefer them dead for the very same reason you savagely squeeze a rubber chicken screaming toy, and outside a few key moments, their survival is not necessary for progress. However, in this house, we back the blue and the white. Anyway, while Dr. Freeman saves, while Dr. Freeman increases Black Mesa's liability insurance premium, you will find that keeping NPCs alive can be useful in accessing certain areas. Although it does raise the question of what exactly the point of this frag grenade workspace is. Undoubtedly the result of some of the money the Defense Department flushes down the black hole toilet once in a while. Now, due to a certain incident caused by a load-bearing capacity misunderstanding, escaping Black Mesa the way you came isn't possible. You are forced to venture deeper into the belly of the dying beast in a segment that doesn't seem to be working quite as intended. But finally, some good news. Scientists and Barneys alike relay the fact that America's finest, the Jarheads, have arrived. Surely rescue and crayons galore are imminent. Rather than a rescue force, it seems that the Defense Department has opted for the melee angle of this particular clean-up operation, something explored further in the surprisingly fun Opposing Force spin-off. Another feather in the cap for Half-Life's innovation was the reactivity of the NPCs. Enemy self-preservation was not really a prevalent concept in action games at the time, much akin to your average fork-wielding electrical outlet-seeking toddlers. The goon sees, the goon shoots, the goon pursues, contemptuous to any notions of survival. The Zen creatures and fauna you have faced so far have pretty much followed this archetype, although sometimes fleeing and repositioning when fired upon. Even scientists will react to the cochlear damage resulting from your nearby gunfire, but the Marines are simply built different. Shoot at a Marine? Months of force preservation training ensures proper decision making when faced with the prospect of a 357-sized entry wound. Throw a grenade at a Marine? The distinct lack of colors instinctually frightens him away. Face a vastly outnumbered and outgunned enemy? Call in an airstrike at the cost of several hundreds of thousands of US taxpayer dollars. Semper Fi. Reactive enemy AI is something we take for granted nowadays, unless you happen to be one of the few unlucky souls who played Redfall. And it is no wonder why this game, despite a few hiccups, is still effective at immersion. It also makes gameplay vastly more interesting. Where the Zen creatures are susceptible to the old run-and-gun strategies of the era, you will find that charging the hit-scan Marines head-on will leave you shredded in mere seconds. Moving from cover to cover is imperative, as the Marines themselves are fond of the ancient art of grenade toss and are well schooled in the violence of action. Sit on your ass for too long behind cover and they quickly overwhelm your position with either grenades or their ass. The game design of Half-Life is much like a roller coaster, and sometimes it even looks like one. Segments of high intensive combat, dodging grenades, wasps, ass crabs, now you're getting flanked, click, 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 you ran out of bullets, Dumbo, what you gonna do? Is broken up by environmental exploration, puzzles, or just genuine break rooms with friendly NPCs. That's not to say that other shooters of that time were an endless cavalcade of running and gunning, but the addition of living colleagues, scuffed as they might be,
That could be very useful.
makes the briefing room more alive, more grounded for our weary HEV-clad feet to rest properly. Now, the get to the surface plan is a wash. However, your co-workers, most of them dead, leaving you in prime position for a promotion and to finally earn tenure, believe that they can stop more non-citizen spawning portals from appearing by launching a satellite into space, something the Marines have aborted, undoubtedly tied to a DoD contract dispute. As such, you head to the green goo part of the Black Mesa complex, as foreshadowed by the green goo, and subsequently face your first boss. Entering a great cylinder, interestingly enough not containing any green goo, you are warned by a fellow scientist of what must be done.
Fire the rocket engine. Destroy the damned thing before it grows any larger. Stop!
In the ICBM test fire room, a tentacle monster has made itself home, blocking your progress until dealt with. Venture deeper into the facility to turn on the power, then enter the big fan room. Every Fortune 500 company has at least one. Take a moment to enjoy the very human, very safe design of this room before launching yourself into the rafters. Turn on the fuel, return once again, and fry the enraged crustacean. With an opportune hole appearing in the arthropod's place, the only correct decision for any researcher of Dr. Freeman's caliber is to dive in. Unfortunately, it seems like your reputation for killing American servicemen has grown to such a degree where you are hunted personally. A nice bit of environmental storytelling and good diegetic reasoning for why this amount of Marines seem personally hell-bent on killing you.
So, who's this guy, Freeman? He said he was at ground zero. Yeah, maybe. All I know for sure is he's been killing my buddies. Oh yeah, he'll pay. He will definitely pay.
Nevertheless, Dr. Freeman is somehow able to utilize his MIT degree to mow down countless living beings, and you are quickly able to reach the satellite launch site and complete the blast-off. Unfortunately, the satellite does not succeed in stopping the Zen portals. Something from the other side is keeping them open. Enjoying a joyride for only a short while until you catch a couple of vehicular manslaughter charges, you enter yet another Black Mesa R&D lab complex of questionable ethics, and once again bear witness to the brilliant minds and hiring practices of Black Mesa Incorporated that got us into this mess in the first place.
Don't let it overcharge.
What do you mean, over?
Unfortunate, since you need a live, non-boned scientist to unlock the complex from the inside. Really? Although fire hazards are maybe not the most dire concern as of right now. Fortunately, you find 3 live co-workers, escort one to the door, and leave for the mountains. Here, Dr. Gordon Freeman provides a dissertation on why armored vehicles without infantry support is an exceedingly terrible idea. Jihadi Gordon proves most adept at dismantling Western hardware, but as we move throughout the complex towards the Lambda Labs, the landscape has changed. Not literally, mind you, New Mexico isn't all that interesting, but the combat between the Marines and Zen forces seem to be escalating. The military seems to agree.
Forget about Freeman. We're abandoning the base.
The situation is quickly becoming untenable, the natural response of course being more airstrikes. However, we finally make it to the Lambda complex, and once again we go deeper into the maws of Black Mesa. A scientist hands us the most powerful weapon of the game and immediately comments on Dr. Freeman's apparent willingness to kill.
But I just can't bring myself to use it on a living creature. You don't look as if you have any trouble killing things.
We are no longer a peer, nor a co-worker, nor a fellow scientist, which is how we were greeted in the beginning of the game. We are an instrument of death. We are Freeman, and our reputation precedes us even into Zen later in the game. You are informed that the way to the teleportation lab is blocked. First, you need to restart the reactor, flood the core, and then turn on no-clip since the segment is still bugged 25 years later. Thanks for the update, guys. With a little bit of magic, we make it to the teleportation lab where we are warned about a powerful presence in the other world. Fortunately, we are also provided with more 357 ammo, so no sweat. Then, we are finally led into the alien world of Zen. Now, I am by far not the only individual with a lukewarm vendetta against the Zen levels, mostly due to the weird jumping puzzles, slow pacing, and general rushed feeling of the levels. I can only speak for myself when I say that a lot of it stems from being a kid trying to mush my fine motor lacking fingers together to properly and timely perform a long jump when I should instead be in the mines performing my rightful obligation. The previous Black Mesa maps might not have had much of a foot in the realm of reality, but succeeded in elevating gameplay. The level designers of Half-Life specifically built the enemy AI in smaller, constrained test environments first, so they could showcase their new behavior such as flanking, repositioning, and chase scenes, and then gave the level designers those test rooms so they could be integrated and reshaped into the actual levels of Half-Life. Half-Life. With the Black Mesa environment, we feel it with the verticality, we feel it with the crate and cover placement. The roller coaster action and pacing is never static in Half-Life, and the maps and AI are inseparable. Zen, on the other hand, feels less so. It's more open, more long-ranged, more reminiscent of other games from that era. The enemies float around in free space or just lounge around in the overworld. There is a distinct feeling of separation between enemy and environment in Zen, also exacerbated by the levels being shorter. As our first Zen boss, we must face the Gonarch. Really? The Gonarch, guys? Come on. The Gonarch makes itself distinct with primitive jiggle physics, instantaneous procreation, and then subsequently exploding white, clumpy, toxic goo at you. Dispose of the 20 feet tall H.R. Geiger synopsis and proceed. Soon, you face the ELPHNT, the supreme leader of the Zen forces and the final boss de jure, although many will find Interloper to be the toughest chapter overall. Much like the Gonarch, the ELPHNT fight is relatively simple. You must destroy the Zen crystals surrounding the floating infant immediately, which is incredibly easy. And then you must contend with its two attacks, one which deals an immense amount of damage but is easy to avoid, and another unavoidable attack which extends the runtime of the game by teleporting you into the dimension where your socks or gloves go intermittently. At some point, the ELPHNT's soft, squishy newborn head will open up like a flower, to which your response should be to unload your entire supply of depleted uranium-235 courtesy of the glue-on gun, which immediately kills the boss and ends the game. But rather than returning to Earth and the adoration of your old-ass colleagues, or dying in the explosion of the levitating infant, you are transported to a face-to-face annual performance review by the mysterious suited man, the Gman. He quickly explains that freedom and liberty have been brought to the border world of Zen thanks to you, and he gives you a choice. One of the first choices outside of which gun to use when you've run out of 357 ammo Dr. Freeman is ever presented with throughout the game. Continue your exemplary employment or not. But if you choose not to, you'll soon find that you had no choice at all. As promised, you are presented with a fight you have no possible way of winning. The Freeman, as Gordon will be known 20 years later in Half-Life 2, is no free man at all. And if you've kept your eyes open during your run through the Black Mesa complex, you will see that there was never any slack in your leash at all. At almost every corner, the G-Man is observing you, always a step ahead of you, always seemingly ignoring the boundaries of established reality. He is a government man, although who, or indeed what his employers are, remains very much clouded in mystery, especially as his powers of teleportation is revealed at the end of the game. You see him most prominently in the intro, the segment where you are literally railroaded by a train going from point A to B without any free will in your destination. The linear tram intro is once again a microcosm of Half-Life. The free man and his actions and destinations puppeted, manipulated, or influenced by the G-Man. You are taken through many places and many spectacles, and while you can move about both the literal and metaphorical tram cabin, you have no real control over the end. G-Man's influence over events in the lore of the franchise, undeniable.
Some believe the fate of our worlds is inflexible. My employers disagree. They authorize me to nudge things in a particular direction from time to time.
His role is engorged in the sequels, and looking back at Half-Life 1, we can only wonder how much and how often he exactly nudged things along. In Opposing Force, the spin-off expansion made by Gearbox, making its place in canon a hotly debated topic, we discovered that G-Man reactivates a thermonuclear device, deactivated only moments prior by that game's protagonist, to provide a several megaton nudge.
Quite so.
In Half-Life 2, Episode 2, Dr. Eli Vance explains how the G-Man was the one who provided the mysterious, incredibly pure our Zen crystal sample GG3883, and it is pretty much confirmed that Gman is your mysterious sponsor at Black Mesa.
The right man in the wrong place can make all the difference in the world.
Gman, or Gman acting on behalf of his employers, wouldn't place Dr. Gordon Freeman in Black Mesa only to leave the experiment up to chance. The anti-mass spectrometer experiment did not go wrong. It went exactly as planned. Even ignoring opposing force, which Valve certainly does, his direct machinations are way more evident in the official sequels, as is Gordon's lack of agency as a result of this.
Rather than offer you the illusion of free choice, I will take the liberty of choosing for you.
Gordon was the right man in the wrong place. In Half-Life 1, there is no evidence of Gman's direct involvement in our survival and victory like opposing force nor the sequels. It is the skill of Freeman, the player, that braves Black Mesa, the US military, and finally slays the Nihilanth. That very skill that Gman silently observes throughout, making him offer employment to us, and by extension leads us into the sequel. Gman in Half-Life 1 is somewhat of a developer stand-in. He is omnipresent, unbothered by the chaos, able to manipulate our reality at will. He provides the sample and places Freeman exactly where he needs to be, setting up the plot for reasons outside of our comprehension. And when the game ends, he keeps Dr. Freeman in stasis for 20 years between Half-Life 1 and 2, only to pluck and place him exactly where he needs to be at that moment in time as the plot demands. He might not open and close doors literally in Half-Life 1, but the plot very much springs from his fingers. Every time we head deeper into Black Mesa, we head deeper towards the unknowable and incomprehensible. The roller coaster of Half-Life is inverted. The build-up goes downwards ever deeper, before the plunge from the mundanity of ties and casseroles to the eldritch horror of cosmic insignificance.
Last, I am the last. Deceive you, will deceive you.
Gman is the conduit of the unknowable presented to us in Half-Life. The anti-mass spectrometer experiment, Zen, and the threat which is soon to be unleashed as a result of this. He is the broker, the connection, the bureaucrat between the realism presented in the intro and the unfathomable terror that lurks in the multi-dimensional world of Half-Life. When even a being as ancient as the Nihilanth warns you of the thin, pale, middle-aged car salesman, we are right to worry about who yanks our leash. The Vortigaunt wear shackles, slaves to the Nihilanth, but the Nihilanth itself also wears them. It seems that freedom is illusory, a deception pulled on the unfortunate by those greater and more terrifying themselves.
Prepare for unforeseen consequences.
And so, at the end of Half-Life, you end up back in the tram, where Gman gives you his Hobson's choice. It seems that despite your diving, your teleportation, your bee-hopping, you never really left Half-Life's tram, and when you open the sequel, you'll find yourself planted at almost exactly the same situation Gman left you in Half-Life 1. The free man, on a train, monitored by Gman, going from point A to B as he orchestrates.
Stop!
Oh dear! My good.
Alright, that was a video. Like, subscribe, comment down below. Did you like the Zen part of Half-Life? Did you like Interloper? I certainly did. Now, support links down in the description, Patreon, donation links, and all that good jazz. Okay, I want to tongue wag a little bit more about Gman and the smoking man or cigarette smoking man from X-Files. I ended up cutting a segment because it just went on for way too long. It got a little bit out there, and it's definitely not one-to-one, but there is something here, guys. So, Valve developer Jan Bernier said the following in Raising the Bar. The original concept for Half-Life came from folks here thinking about Stephen King's short story, The Mist, along with a healthy dose of X-Files style conspiracy thrown in. Now, as far as The Mist is concerned, it draws some fairly obvious similarities. In the novella, Arrowhead Project opens a portal, monsters come through, and people get messed up. I'm not necessarily the biggest king cell out here. I mean, we all know not to ask Steven what happens in chapter 22 of his beloved 1986 horror novel, so I am a little biased when I dismiss The Mist as mostly a superficial aesthetic inspiration as far as the theme of science gone wrong, resulting in tentacle and insect monsters, but you know, I am soapboxing here. The Mist features a lot of interpersonal crises between the survivors. It's way more horror focused, it's way more personality clash focused as far as the themes are concerned, whereas Half-Life 1 only really has Dr. Freeman and his beloved 357. Now, I'm not trying to dump on our favorite speedballing horror author here. I mean, I love The Jaunt. The Jaunt is literally Arthur C. Clarke, but horror, which that's all I ask for from my sci-fi. With X-Files, different conversation entirely. So X-Files season 1 through 5 runs prior to Half-Life's release. So I'm going to go ahead and ignore season 6 and onwards, which quite frankly, that's good advice for anyone looking to get into X-Files. X-Files was a monster of the week, procedural, supernatural horror series, but the Smoking Man gradually became the overarching antagonist throughout, much like how Gman gradually takes on a larger and larger role in the Half-Life series. Now, obviously the visual is a given right off the bat. You could argue that it's just typical ufology, Man in Black type of fit, and maybe I'm dismissing the folklore just because I'm not American, but X-Files was really culturally hot at that time, so I gotta roll with it. In the show, the Smoking Man embodies the unknown, the conspiracy that the protagonist seeks to unravel. He has his own employers, the Syndicate, who collaborates with alien forces for reasons outside of our understanding, outside the understanding of our protagonists. The conspiracy is it's decidedly extraterrestrial and possibly rectally probing. Now, much like how Gman is revealed to have influenced the events of the Black Mesa incident, the Smoking Man directly manipulates the FBI to further his and his employers' goals. They are both the intersection between the unknown and the diegetic reality. Both are intermediaries between what we, the audience, is allowed to glean of the overarching nebulous threat by the developers or writers and what remains unknown. In X-Files, the alien threat is still almost completely unknown by season 5, and all we know of the Combined Empire is the token force left on Earth and the transhumanistic experimentation or corruption on humanity. Everything else we know of the Combine, we have to infer. We aren't shown their full military might, but the entirety of Earth was conquered in 7 hours. We don't know what powers the actual Combine leadership possess, but we see what lengths they go through to keep G-Man imprisoned, and we see what type of powers G-Man has. He can green teleport, he can stop time, he can put people into stasis. G-Man is basically pure magic. If G-Man, with all his powers and his alleged employers behind him, have to oppose the Combine Empire from the shadows using select human agents at select times, implicitly the Combine Empire is beyond any power level comprehension. Likewise, the Smoking Man, allegedly representing the Syndicate, and now I've said allegedly so much that it sounds like a Mr. Beast situation is crazy commentary video. The Smoking Man manipulates the leadership of the FBI, takes out presidents, civil leaders. He's got access to the Pentagon. If he is just one employee, implicitly the Syndicate's reach must be crazy. And in season 4 or 5, it is indeed revealed that the Syndicate works alongside aliens. The Smoking Man has so much influence and power himself, but he's just one piece on the board. Who are the Syndicate masterminds or alien masterminds behind it all? Now, I don't want to get carried away too much. There is a pretty big difference in what the unknown represents in Half-Life and in X-Files, aliens notwithstanding. The Syndicate, as far as I see it, represents much more of a structural enemy, the Cold War era CIA deep state conspiracy. The central focus is the New World Order type of takeover of Earth. There are aliens involved, but the colonization is still centered on Earth. We are still kind of the main characters in all of this. On the other hand, Gman represents cosmic indifference. Earth was an afterthought conquest for the Combine, interesting only for its natural resources. If the overarching antagonist of X-Files is the Syndicate working with aliens, it's at least still rooted in institutions. At least if the president is part of the Syndicate deep state conspiracy, it's like Bill Clinton. You know, he plays the saxophone and intercourses the interns. I can relate. Half-Life's otherworldly unknown is cosmic horror. It's basically Lovecraftian. Gman himself is already beyond our comprehension, and the Combine is that tenfold. So it's definitely not one-to-one with Gman and the Smoking Man, but the similarity is more than the suit. I stand by that. Alright, I've been yapping long enough, and I do understand, tiny bit hypocritical, dismissing The Mist as being purely an aesthetic or largely an aesthetic inspiration, and then upon seeing two middle-aged white bureaucrats in suits absolutely soy out, go super hard in the paint. But hey, you gotta let your heart cook sometimes instead of your brain, So like, subscribe, comment down below. Do you see anything special with the Gman?